Jon Moorhouse is going to give me some faith in the gender, aren't you, Jon? Jon's going to come and talk to us about cross-sector transferable skills in delivering sustainable products. Ladies and gentlemen, Jon Moorhouse.
I have a timer set at 9:57, so we'll just get that going. I'm Jon Moorhouse. I'm an architect. I run a practice called Constructive Thinking. We're Liverpool-based. And we partner on lots of projects with Novus Property Solutions. And whilst both companies have been heavily into sustainability for a long time, for many reasons, we kind of started our social housing retrofit journey together, and it's come quite a long way. So today I'm just going to talk about the lessons, some of the lessons we've learned in that, and how those skills are naturally being transferred into the other sectors in which we work. Embarrassingly, I was presenting last week and I was introduced as Mr. Retrofit, which I most certainly am not. And I was delighted to see Austin here this morning. It's a title that's far more fitting for Austin, I think. Oh, we have some transitions. So what was great for me about this morning was just being reminded about the kind of narrow fields that we work in and how many more fields there are to net zero. And what I also found myself musing about carbon dioxide. So I'd just like you to imagine what a kilogram of carbon dioxide looks like. And I might tell you later on. But if you think about the sectors that we've already touched on in many ways today, travel and transport, industry, energy infrastructure, which is more and more a biggie and is the biggest part in the equation of net zero, I suppose. The natural environment, love the presentation on roads and the built environment. And it's just that 1/5 that we're working in. But if you think about what we do as architects, we work in most sectors. Novus also working in planned maintenance, which is very important in retrofit. If you think that plant maintenance is component replacement, and we do it on a series of programs or when it's needed. When it's needed, it's broken, it's reactive maintenance, and we just replace stuff. We just replace stuff on a rolling program, and that keeps everything running. If you think that could become planned retrofit, so all we need is a strategy, a target, a place we want to get our buildings to, and our planned maintenance or reactive maintenance can be the vehicle to get us there in many cases. But it involves planning. It involves understanding where we are now on that carbon front, where we want to get to, and probably what the stages are on the way. Novus also work on compliance works. This is interesting because compliance regulations change, so we keep having to think about what we're going to do next. Where we were a couple of years ago and where we need to be in the future. Nowhere more serious than fire at present, but I think clean air is going to be another set of compliance regulations that we think about, and of course damp and mould. Novus are also working, and we work in these sectors too, in refurbishment and fast-track fit-out. So this could be education, could be health, could be retail, could be hospitality, so hotels and so on. All big consumers of energy, all very different uses, all with very different life cycles, but all relevant to our net zero journey. So just going back to, does everybody know what SHDF is? Austin mentioned it this morning, Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. Why this is important, whatever sector you're in, is it's now about 5 years old, which is a long time in decarbonisation. And it becomes quite interesting to see where the government focus is on funding. So the government have funded, with this current round, probably sufficient funding for 100,000 dwellings. Not many out of 23 million, but sufficient to build a body of knowledge and a supply chain. And it's important to realise that this funding was for stepped retrofit, so taking us to a particular target a long way short of net zero. And in designing for that, we've really got to understand where we go next. and so that we're not actually preventing ourselves from getting to that next stage. And that's why I've termed this adaptive phasing. If we're thinking about any building or infrastructure improvement, we have to think about the starting point, the end point if there is one, or the endish goal, and the steps we have to make along the way to get anywhere near that. And I think we've learnt that in the last 5 years. So one of my colleagues in the front, we worked on one of the 3 whole house retrofit projects. Only 3 were funded. We did 100 houses. It was huge. We were going to change the world. Now we can do 5,000 a year fairly comfortably for less money per property with better knowledge. And that isn't because we're brilliant. It's because the supply chain and the industry knowledge has grown to enable that kind of level of work. And it's still tiny. You know, we've worked on 0.1 of the overall target in 5 years. It's going to take us, somebody can do the maths, another 1,000 years to get there if we don't accelerate. So just to touch on some of the projects that we've worked on together. Places for People, which you can see here. This was a large estate on the edge of Bedford. It was a really tricky project. It would have been easy for the end client, PFP, to have said, it's too tricky to do in a year. We'll just push this one down the road, and that happens in every sector. But this one was taken, this has taken place. It's delivered in a year, something like 90 apartments, all to a high level of sustainability on a fabric basis, so that when we add renewables and with a little bit of grid decarb, we can get this to net zero. Guinness Partnerships, we worked together on a project in Crewe, 100 houses of deep retrofit, very, very difficult system build concrete houses that we took very close to net zero, probably closer than we're allowed to, but we'll be honest with this room about that. And then we worked with a tiny organisation, South Derbyshire, who only have 3,500 properties. And their biggest challenge was actually running out of properties from right to buy. So the target here was to help South Derbyshire bring all of their properties up to a standard where everybody was happy and nobody wanted to buy the properties and nobody wanted to move out. And there was enough capacity and the capability of that section of the council to then develop some of the other land they had and build the stock. So there's a social aspect to this as well, where we're kind of reversing the trend of right to buy just by redressing the balance. So this is bringing me to the advice that we really want to pass on to everybody in other sectors, and it's the advice we're taking into our other sectors. Just start small, just start. Don't defer what you're doing. If you have to do a pilot, and then build that knowledge. Collaboration, as Inga said, share the knowledge as much as we can, develop our supply chains. The carbon we're talking about that we're trying to imagine what a kilo of doesn't know the difference between housing and hotels or transport. It's just carbon. So let's share all our knowledge like we've been doing today. Engage with the building occupants. If you're working on buildings, people use them. How do people use them? We've got to understand that first before we decide what to do with our buildings. And of course, make the journey inclusive. We're not hiding anything from anybody. We're in a massive growth industry where there is an incredible opportunity for us to collaborate in ways that commercially we might not have wanted to in the past. So here are my kind of 5 takeaways for whatever sector you're working in. There's a reason there's a picture of Isle of Dogs on here. I'm not an EastEnders fan. It is because if you're interested in buildings, you can walk from mud chutes at the bottom up to Canary Wharf, and I think you'll find every archetype of housing that you're going to find anywhere in the country. So if we can decarbonise Isle of Dogs, we can decarbonise anywhere. That's almost my 10 minutes. I might be half a minute early. So I'll just tell you what I think a kilo of carbon dioxide looks like. I think you could fit 2.5 into this room, and you can't see it. But the thing is, with the constant production and release of carbon dioxide, it could easily be 7 or 8. So in an urban environment, you might have 3 times as much carbon dioxide than in a rural environment, cows aside. And And so we can't see it, and we don't know, and we have to take each other's word for it, but we do know the impact of it, and that's what we've got to bring down.
Thank you, Jon.